Come on, recording light. Turn on. Okay, welcome everyone to the October 19, 2022 Microsoft 365 Modern Management Meetup. So we've got a couple of people absent today. So Jerome and Stephen both had conflicts and weren't able to join, which means that Ben and I will be able to allocate all of your follow-up items to them. So we've already given them, we gave them notice before the session. So anything that you need followed up, just let us know, and we will happily nominate Jerome or Stephen for those.
That also includes if you need your dry cleaning picked up, your car wash, things like that. Just let us know, and Steve will happily go and do it himself.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, or maybe yeah. I guess as long as there's also coffee involved, it's probably okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So he's not here to defend himself.
Yeah, so my name's Mark O'Shea, and I guess my happy takeaway from the past month is that I don't have to change my Twitter handle. That's my positive message for the month. I don't have to change my Twitter handle. So what about you, Ben? What's your positive?
Yeah, I guess my positive's the same. You know, I'm gonna be in trouble if PowerShell ever changes, but yeah. Aside from that, I think I'm good. It was quite funny you said that. I'm literally just looking at Rudy Oom's Twitter, who is Mr_MDM. So I guess that's a little bit of a problem. No, my takeaway is it looks like there's a lot of new and exciting stuff coming through to Intune and just modern management in general. So it's an exciting spot to be in. Curious to see what everyone thinks about on the subject of pricing. But maybe that's a touchy subject.
Yeah. We can. Yeah, I think there's some stuff we probably should talk about. Something that if Steve was on, Steve would probably be asking us to not talk about some of these things, or at least he would be leaving the meeting while everything's taking place. So I guess then, just to sort of set the agenda for today, if you've joined previously, nothing dramatically different. And I just realized I haven't got my proper headset on yet. So just give me a second so that I can actually get better quality audio, or at least hopefully better quality audio.
Much better already.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so yeah, so I guess just for anyone who's new, like just sort of drop a note into chat for a quick intro. But then the other things that we'll cover off is next week, even though it's in US time. So it's kind of like the timing kind of seems like a compromise between EST and PDT, because I think it's like, from memory, I think it's like 7 a.m. starts, but that's the basically Windows and Intune sessions for 3.5 days next week. So early morning sessions for those of you in Australia or somewhere fairly close. Maybe those of you in other places, the timing might be a little bit more favorable for you. And we'll put up details in just a moment. And then I guess the main thing then is we'll focus on, I guess, just the top line Intune related announcements that were made at Ignite. Now, we've got plenty of scope to go through other things that were announced, if they're things that we've sort of paid attention to once we get into that general discussion area. But I think there's enough, enough of a conversation around some of the Intune pieces that should probably keep us busy for a little while. So thank you, Kwok, for posting the link in. So what is it? Yeah, so effectively, it's like, if we look at the times, it's 7 a.m. PDT. So if it was 9 a.m. PDT, that would be somewhat more bearable. But for those of you time zone close to us, it's like 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. or potentially even worse. Now, the other thing here is that even though there's like a calendar link on that page, the calendar link isn't to attend the event. It's just a placeholder for the event. You need to go into that session list and actually choose the sessions that you want. And then you can go through and register for each of those ones individually. Now, there's definitely a few interesting ones in here that like I'm hoping they get recorded, or if I'm up early enough. Actually, next week I do have to get up early, but it's the things that are going to clash with some of these. So I couldn't, maybe I can sort of join while I'm waiting for my sessions to kick off. But I think this is really going to go a long way towards answering some of the questions that will be raised even by some of the things that we're going to cover off in here today. But there were plenty of good announcements. Some things that I've seen cause a bit of confusion. Some people thinking that something unique has just happened. And I think it's fair to say there wasn't really anything unique in the announcements versus behaviors that have been exhibited previously, but we can loop back around to that. Oh, excellent. So, and Kwok, so you can probably answer this one as well. So is this the replacement, or not the replacement, but is this instead of those normal post-Ignite sessions we've had for the last couple of years?
That's
where
right.
there were, so because that's what I sort of think. I was sort of going through this looking to see were there anything, were there the same thing being run again in different time zones like we've had for the last few years? But no. Okay. Oh, well, recording's available so that, so they'll still be useful to us regardless of what time zone that we're in. So just make sure that you do go through an RSVP for the sessions that you want to attend. Like more than likely, I should be able to jump on some of them potentially, but likelihood is quite low.
Sure.
Okay, now in terms of introductions, anyone who hasn't attended previously on today's call? Who just wants to?
There's some new names. Anyone feel like jumping off mute or just going into the chat and saying hi? We're a very friendly group.
Hi, I'm Adrian. I've been to one or two before, but I've changed roles recently and have more usage of Intune and Endpoint now, hence I'm back here again.
Awesome. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Hello, good morning for me. I'm Bilal from the Netherlands. And
okay.
I have been sick last week, so I'm here for the recap of Microsoft Ignite.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about the important stuff.
Okay, thank
you. Give me the cheat notes.
Or what we think are important things as opposed to trying to condense everything. So I'm sure others have sort of focused on some other areas. So once we get into general discussion, I guess like anyone who's got anything that we didn't cover that you were particularly excited about from the Ignite announcements, please make sure you let us know when we get into that general conversation piece.
Of course,
okay,
thank you very much.
Yeah. So with that, let's jump on in, and I guess I probably shouldn't have called it like just the Ignite 2022 recap. It's I should have called it the Ignite 2022 H2 stuff we care about recap. I should have been a little bit more specific in there, but I think the invite was specific enough that we'd be talking mostly about Intune and Windows related capabilities. So I guess the first thing then is if you're going through the schedule of the different session recordings, etc. Like if you're someone who like if you've got YouTube app or whatever on your TV and that's easier to watch there versus trying to watch on your laptop or whatever, a lot of the sessions are already up on YouTube. And the two that I'd recommend kind of as a good starting point for anything Intune related would be the two we've got listed here. So BRK 35 and 54. So they go through a lot of what we're covering in more detail. They've got demos, etc., that they're working through. I've grabbed screenshots from some of the demos just to make sure it wasn't just death by PowerPoint without any images in it. So we can at least take a look at some of the things that are in there. But definitely, these would be the two that I'd say to start with before you start venturing out into other ones that are, maybe, potentially more along the lines of like other things that you need to know about then. So, okay, and I just saw Dom's message. So welcome Dom from the Sydney area as well. And looks like we've got a few more people dropping in. So welcome to everyone who's sort of dropping in. So let's, I guess, jump into the thing that sort of has really sort of caught everyone by surprise here, which is the branding change that occurred so basically removing Endpoint Manager from the branding, and now we've got basically Intune now serves two purposes. It's a brand and it's a product. So, so Endpoint Manager branding has gone, and now Intune is just the all-up, UEM brand from Microsoft. And that sort of means a bit more. So if you weren't paying attention to the announcements, don't worry, we'll go through and explain what that means now, what it will mean in the future as well. But really down here, if we take a look down here, what it's really telling us here is that, previously where under management, it would have said Endpoint Manager. Now it's got Intune in here. But notice some of the wording in here. It's still important to note that they're not saying that Config Manager is going away. They're not saying that co-management is going away. Yeah. Those things still exist. But it's more that now if somebody says, I'm using Intune, we'll actually have to stop them and say, what do you mean you're using Intune? Which Intune? Are you using the Intune suite of products or selected products from the suite, or are you using the Intune service? So a little bit of confusion that's going to be caused around that. Now, so this slide, you can probably tell from this slide, I sort of cut this out of one of the videos because I wanted to talk about something in here that sort of sets the stage for what we've got coming up. Now, if we take a look down here at what's included under the Microsoft security banner, and this is, and Kwok, you can probably say, don't position it this way to me after the session, but this is the way I'm going to position it now. The way that now I think something that it took these announcements for me to realize this, even though it's been the case for a while. But I guess some of the things that we now sort of have to accept is that in the part, like if we go back a few years, if someone said, oh, look, I want, and let's just make this Microsoft 365 security. If somebody said, oh, how do I get the Microsoft 365 security technologies? The answer would have been sign up for an M365 E5 for the users. That is not the case anymore. So the E5 might be something that you use, but each and every one of these has got something that we could go through and spend more on, and basically get additional licenses or pay for additional services outside of what we get included with an M365 E5 subscription. Now, I'll just say E5 from this point onwards. So, and I'm talking about Microsoft 365 E5, not O365 E5, not EMS E5. So the thing that I guess is important just to sort of call out here is that some of the bits of feedback that I guess we've all seen, and maybe we've been involved in some conversations with people about it, is that there are now some additional Intune capabilities becoming available that are effectively premium add-ons to Intune that aren't part of an M365 E5 license. Now, that really shouldn't come as a surprise because there's already one that exists. Remote Help really broke the mold there. But each of these has got components. And if we sort of just jump to the next slide, this will sort of just break it down a little bit further for you, is that effectively what we're seeing now is that, the days of just assuming that something gets rolled into an E5 subscription, those days have passed. Now, it doesn't mean that the things that are already in an E5 subscription won't continue to get new capabilities added, get new features, etc. But when there are new categories, etc., that aren't just enhancements to existing features, I think we're kind of seeing a bit of a shift here. And if we sort of, and as much as I know some people are sort of looking at going, Microsoft's just trying to, take more money from us. Well, it's like they're a business. They need to make money. They've got shareholders. So, so you can't, as much as we may not like some of the way things get broken down, as a business, their responsibility is to shareholders. And that's something that, sometimes people, or just based on the comments that, that I've seen in some of the different, places where these announcements were being discussed, people kind of forget that, Microsoft isn't a charity, that they do have, fiscal obligations. Now, just to sort of go through some of these other ones that are in there, and I've just sort of called these ones out because depending on what part of the Microsoft or Microsoft 365 world you live in, you may not realize how many paid add-ons there are already to Microsoft 365 E5 licenses. And the ones that I've called out on here Yeah, and sort of just looking at Eddie's comment here, saying that so much has been added to subscriptions over the years. Like, I think it's probably fair to say that for most of us, we probably just thought it was going to continue like that forever. But now that we look back at it, it's like, well, hang on. If Microsoft, like the alternative to these new features being add-ons would be for the cost of the base subscription. I know I shouldn't call an E5 a base subscription, but for this conversation, let's call it a base subscription. The alternative would have been for that price, the price of the base subscription, to keep going up dramatically year on year as new features were added, regardless of whether you wanted them or not. So I think it's kind of like a balancing act there. But even sort of going back to, so even pre-Microsoft 365, when Office 365 E5 was announced, and people going, oh, great, I get free phone calls. And it's like, no, calling plans are extra. So this is something that's, when was M365 or O365 E5 introduced? So that was back in like 2013 or 2014, something along those lines. So this is something that's been happening for, there's probably some other add-ons that actually, things like additional SharePoint storage is another example. But we're talking about stuff that add-ons existing in one form or another for 10 years. Now, Entra, we covered that a few months ago and said that, permissions management's an add-on. With Defender, we've now got the app governance for Defender for cloud apps. That's a paid add-on. Someone who's using Sentinel, there's going to be ingestion costs for a lot of services. It's going to be storage costs, etc. Priva has got 2 add-ons into the whole privacy piece, and Purview, if you start sort of going across Azure, then you've also got your Azure processing or the PaaS costs for Azure in there. So I guess the takeaway here, it's not to paint a picture saying that Microsoft is just adding all these different add-ons. The idea here is for anyone who maybe is really, really focused on Intune and saying, why is Microsoft doing this to me? They're not doing it to you. They're not doing it to people who focus on Intune /config manager / let's retire endpoint manager after that sentence. This is something that's just been happening across the board with different Microsoft 365 services. So, and this is something where, I'm sure those of you who work for Microsoft partners or work for an organization where you have to handle everything, you're probably aware of at least some of these. But those of you who are very, very focused on a particular role, so if your job is incredibly siloed, you might be going, what the hell are these? I didn't even know that these things existed. So I just sort of wanted to mention here that I think this is just really, I think now it's quite clear that this is the way that new capabilities or new categories, not new capabilities, new categories that aren't really just enhancements to what's already in the box with products. I think this is really the approach that we're going to see moving forward from there.
Agreed.
Yeah, and so it's even Brendan. Yeah, I'm looking at Brendan's comment about the E7, and it's that's the thing where people have sort of been joking about some of these things for a while now, and I guess the problem that I think we've already got, even with something like just say an M365 E5, is what percentage of the different services is the typical customer actually using? So so not talking about the value prop of having everything rolled into a suite of applications, but talking about what are you actually using in there? What are you actually getting value out of? Versus what the potential cost savings are per month? And once you went up to like an E7 or an E9 or whatever, I think you'd be getting to the point where the price would be so astronomical that you'd be going, well, hang on, it just makes more sense for me to pick like E3, an E3 or an E5 and start doing the, bolting on the add-ons from there. Unless it got to the point where, obviously, a few dollars extra means that you've got the whole kit and caboodle. So so I think it's the trend that we'll continue to see. And I can't say it's too much of a surprise. And I'm not angry about it. It's like, it's like I kind of like, I'm a shareholder. I should be, I've still got Microsoft stock, so I guess I should be upfront with that and saying, yes, Microsoft, sell more, make more money, make me, yeah. But it's, aren't you supposed to put a disclaimer in before you say things like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. I am not offering financial advice. So I guess it's, just something to sort of watch out for. And if anyone sort of tries to play the victim card, I'm not going to be very sympathetic to it. But that's probably just a general motto that I go by in life anyway, not just for this stuff. So now I've seen that Quok's typed in something. I'm wondering if Quok's sitting there going, don't say that, don't position it that way. I'm sure if Quok has got any words for me, he'll have stern words after this session. Whereas I think if Phil was on, Phil would have to jump in and say, no, don't say that. Okay, so let's then jump in and talk about the expanded, but yeah, I don't think I said anything that's inappropriate there. Like I think, and most of that conversation was really, based on just some of the feedback that, comments that people were sort of putting in after the announcements, etc. And it's like, basically the equivalent of I'm taking my ball and I'm going home kind of threats in some places. And it's like, it's just software licensing. It's not worth the stress. Okay, so let's talk about the Intune product family. So the reason why I put product family there, because I didn't want to list Intune and then have Intune as the top component of Intune. Now, maybe this is somewhere where Quok can actually jump in if he wants to, not putting him on the spot. But is there something like this that we should be using as a proper name instead of just sort of using Microsoft Intune, regardless of which two options we're talking about? Is there going to be something like Intune family or something that we should be using, or is there a way that you've approached it already?
That's a good question. So I guess the way we refer to ourselves internally is actually management engineering.
Yes.
So we don't even use the Intune name internally. So we just call ourselves management. So anything to do with management.
So now you'll have to become Intune engineering, which means you're part of the IE team. Congratulations.
Well, maybe that's why we don't use the Intune name then. Yeah. But yeah, like with Charlie Bell, who now runs Microsoft Security, so all of the security product areas, so Defender and Purview and all that, Entra and that, it all reports to Charlie. He's just simplified all of the naming. So yeah. So externally, we might call the family the Intune product family, like what you've got on the slide. But internally, we're just referred to as the management engineering group.
Yeah. So let's hopefully we sort of see some wording that kind of clear things up. And it's.
I'll give that feedback back to our marketing team.
Yeah. And they'll say, "Where did you study marketing?"
No, we'll get a whole new name next week. Don't give them feedback.
It's every 3 years, right? Because that's how often we release a new product, right?
Yeah.
So the other thing that I was thinking was so actually no, I shouldn't talk about that. I was about to name some names, but we shouldn't do that.
We'll wait until we stop recording.
Stop recording, yeah. So we'll sort of take a look at some of these things in a bit more detail, but again, make sure that you take a look at those two videos that I sort of referred to. You can get them up on YouTube, or you can download them from the Ignite site. But once we get into this bit, they're sort of talking about that there'll be the Intune suite of advanced solutions, not to be confused with the Intune product family. which will be made, which the target is, I guess, end of Q1 2023. Now, we'll talk about these in more detail over the coming slides. So endpoint privilege management, I included remote help here, even though it's already around, but because now, basically, if you weren't aware, it's got the Windows support, but also Android support now. Multiple accounts for MAM devices, tunnel for MAM, and some advanced reporting capabilities. But let's just sort of go through a few of these, and I just realized on the next slide, I just need to delete one of the images from it. That's good. I'll jump across to it now. So for the endpoint privilege management, this is just giving end users the ability to temporarily, I shouldn't say just, it's giving end users the ability to temporarily become an admin or to have admin rights to perform a certain task. Now, the example that they use in the video or in their demos is one that I'm on the fence about whether I like the demonstration they gave or not. There are a few things that I think are kind of wrong with it. And Ben, I think you might be okay commenting on this particular section. But the scenario that they sort of mentioned was that there's someone who realizes that a particular app hasn't been installed on their PC. They don't have admin rights to be able to install it, so they can reach out to support. And the support person says, hey, here's the app share where you can install it from, or copy it locally, and then you can install it from your own machine. And just that scenario for me raises alarm bells. It's not the privileged management piece, it's the application or the lack of application management piece of the story. Because they're saying, hey, even though we've got all of this app management infrastructure in place, let's just sort of have these random apps that we don't use very often, and we'll let users install them after they go through a particular process. It really seems like maybe use things like groups, put users into groups, assign applications to those groups, for example.
If only they had a management platform that had very good controls over deploying managed applications.
Yeah, I know. So it's not the privilege management piece itself that I've got the issue with. I think their concept here of some of the things we should be able to do will be fantastic. But for the scenario they used, it was like, I just it just didn't seem to, I guess it's an easy way to show it. So I guess conceptually it's a good way to show it, but it's terrible in terms of, what's a good practice? Let's just have a share of apps that may or may not get updated on a regular basis and point users to them and tell them to copy it locally and then install it and follow the install prompts, etc.
Yeah, look, a more realistic use case scenario of this is the frontline desktop support person who's out on site fixing an issue. Instead of logging on with their account, which I keep seeing, which is insane, they simply request elevation on the user who's having a problem so they can get into the terminal and investigate what's going on. That's a very real world scenario of what's going to happen. With the hope that potentially they can elevate for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Installing software manually, if we're still doing that in 2022 or 2023, I've got a very large stick and I like to hit people with it. So hopefully we can avoid that use case, and maybe that can trickle back to Microsoft in some way.
Yeah, because it's, I'm glad I wasn't alone in that thinking. I was like, what way?
No. Installing applications manually should not ever be a scenario. We should be managing our devices better.
Now, don't worry. There are some other secrets that get revealed in some upcoming screenshots about other things as well. So don't worry, we've still got some good things to discuss. Okay, so what ends up happening here, and actually I've got to go back 2 slides to this one, but basically, actually I think I missed one, but there'll now be the option to go through from the right mouse click once you've copied it down to your desktop to now open the app with elevated access. So again, the scenario that they've picked out there was one that, I guess, an easy way to demonstrate it, but not a use case, that I think, we can agree the use case scenario isn't particularly strong the way that they showed that there. Unless it's an incredible, just really, really an edge case scenario. Now, the the other thing then that sort of came through as part of this, yeah, I'm looking at Alvin's comment, yeah, Dean's comment and Alvin's comment in there as well. So it's some weird, a bit of a weird one then. Okay, so now with the tunnel for MAM, so basically having per app tunneling for apps on non-managed devices. Now, some of the things that they were mentioning for this is that you've got to use the, like on Android, I think you've got to wrap the apps with the Intune SDK. And on iOS, you've got to use the Intune SDK. And I think they mentioned you had to use something else as well. Does anyone know what it was off the top of their head or what it is? Probably, yeah, I've got a feeling it was some Apple tool, but I could be wrong about it. But basically just sort of meaning now that with being able to tunnel through to back through to on-prem to get access to your on-prem services on non-managed devices. So really the non-managed device element of it is the big part of this story. But also that it's something where that you will need to be using the the app wrapper to go through and wrap the app before this option would be available for you.
Right. So anything you want to use with the tunnel has to be wrapped up.
Yeah, that was the way they were positioning it. So I don't know if it was like if they were, and this is where details are kind of vague at the moment. Like, so I guess if it's something that's already on the MAM list of Intune MAM supported apps, I'm hopefully, something like that. You think you shouldn't have to wrap those again. But I think this is more when they're talking about line of business, that your own line of business apps. I think that was what they were more getting at, that you'll need to start using Intune SDKs around those.
Sure.
But they spend quite a bit of time on it in those in that sessions, one of those breakout sessions. So definitely take a look at those. Now, in the next section, oh, good. This is where there's some interesting slides coming up here. So really here with the endpoint analytics, or I guess more of the advanced reporting capabilities. So they didn't go into like a huge amount of detail about all the different reports, but they went through quite a few in those videos. But all I really want to focus on here is just the initial one where under endpoint analytics, now having anomalies where you'll have these recommendations about the things you should be focusing on. So if we just sort of jump into analytics, now you'll notice that the dates are kind of all over the place as we go through some of these. So this thing was created in 2021, and the latest occurrence was there, but it's an issue. So obviously they've been working their way through sample environments here for quite a while. And then if we jump in and sort of see what the affected devices are, the dates.
Nice.
See, so when I was watching the video of the session, of course I did not notice any of these things, but as I was going and grabbing screenshots, I was looking at it going, what? So Quoc, you can no, I won't be pedantic enough to say, hey, give them feedback that they should have reporting that's newer than 4 years old in there. But I thought they were, look, it's just, obviously they just sort of loaded in some data sources, and somebody forgot to look at that stuff. So with that, the idea here is seeing, what, in this case, the thing that we're focusing in on shouldn't be the dates. It should be here we're saying, hey, we've got apps that just aren't performing that reliably. So at this point, it's, the additional analysis, et cetera, that's going into it, that's part of that advanced reporting. So, so again, so I think basically everything that I sort of covered up until there, I think they were all or most of the premium add-ons. Anything that I missed in there that anyone can think of?
Not that I'm aware of. The AOD lab stuff is going to be pretty exciting. I know that there's a lot of community tools for that sort of stuff, but if they get it right, the biggest trick is how do you provide that elevation without the Kerberos token generally gets refreshed with a log off and log back on. So if they can resolve that, that's going to be great. But I haven't played with it yet, so I'm very curious to see how that works.
So a couple of the things that were sort of just dropped into chat. So things like, so Suda mentioned the phishing stuff, and then the app patching and cloud labs. But from what I can gather, none of those are premium features. And this would be a fantastic time for someone to advise me if that is right or wrong.
Can you clarify that one?
Okay, so the other things we just covered, so the advanced reporting, tunneling, privilege management, etc., they were all, advanced or premium add-ons for Intune. But in this case, I sort of broke these ones out separately because these were things that were either part of the OS or alternatively were, in the case of Labs, seems to be just more of an Azure AD feature more than anything else.
Yeah, I would say that. The custom notifications, I'm not sure. I thought the lap stuff was a premium feature, but maybe I need to read my book of news again.
Yeah, because because I guess with that book of news, there's not a lot of detail in there, but again, those two sessions, BRK 54 and 35, I think, they do a pretty good job of covering it. Okay, so first one here with the custom notifications. Now, was this already announced at some point? Because
the ability to send messages through Intune has been a feature for a little while. Maybe it hasn't been officially announced as a feature, and maybe it's getting more granular control.
So I guess so that might be what it is now that they're saying, hey, here are the actual capabilities. So 3 different options. You've got your taskbar messages, notification area messages, and I think there's actually
so custom notifications has been around on mobile, but it relies on the company portal app to act as the
broker.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Whereas
so this
here,
is more native to the device.
we're using Windows Native to show that whether it's in the taskbar, whether it's in the notification bar,
gotcha.
Yeah, wherever you want to show it.
Cool.
On the logon screen, so.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. So more granular control in the actual operating system, not using the store as the buffer. Sorry, the company portal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
So I just pasted a link in there for it. So so basically there is a tech community article where they do go into it in more detail, but that's in there. And I guess it's just now that we've got a bit more flexibility around it versus what we had previously. The other thing as well that I should have put in the slide is that in this case it's Windows 11 only. So I guess the custom notifications and when we get down to the enhanced phishing protection, I think that is also Windows 11 only. But the Azure AD Labs, I was trying to see, I couldn't find anything that was talking about what version of Azure AD or what edition of Azure AD you needed. I'm sure it's probably mentioned somewhere, but from what I could see, I couldn't see any reference to it, whether it was P1 or P2 of AAD Premium, whether free, etc. had it. So I'd sort of have to work on the assumption for no other reason apart from it's like a lot of other things. I'd have to assume that there'd be at least an AAD Premium P1 requirement there, but I didn't see anything addressing that. Now, on the Microsoft Store side, there are kind of just a few, I don't want to say throwaway lines, but a couple of very brief mentions of some of the enhancements coming down the pipe to the Microsoft Store. So they do mention things like that in the store now. Some of the apps that are in the store, you've got your AppX files in there, you've got MSIX files, you've got exes coming down via the store as well. But the other thing that they're sort of talking about in terms of something to be ready to go when Store for Business fades into the sunset is having app patching capabilities and version control capabilities in there. Now, that is about the level of detail that has been shared so far. So even if you're watching those other videos and you're trawling through all of the blog posts, you're really not going to find too much about this side of things just yet. Yeah, and MSI, yes, thanks to it. Yeah, MSI files are in there as well in the store. So effectively, the store is becoming more of a basically, really expanding in terms of what it can deliver versus previously, even though there are certain things that were basically exes being wrapped as AppX files, you don't need to go through and do the wrapping, etc. anymore. Now, there's still a bit of weirdness around some of the stuff that's going on with the Microsoft. Or I don't know if weirdness is the correct term, but depending on what app you want to use, and let me just sort of use an example here. Let me just pull up the store, and I've got a feeling that let me just find Acrobat. I think this one should do, I think this should do what I want. So let's just install that. Okay, so not sure what you can see there, but basically my screen got basically got a UAC prompt. So yeah, and so some of the things where previously, like assumptions we could make about the way the store worked, where users don't need to have admin rights, etc., to install things.
The good news, Mark, is that with that new feature, you can elevate yourself to go to the store.
That's what I was just thinking. So yeah, so to prevent that UAC, or actually, we wouldn't prevent the UAC prompt. We'd be prepared for the UAC prompt.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so it's going through, but there are other things that will actually get you to go through. And what were some of the other? There was something else that I should have kept track of it, but others where they'll actually sort of throw you into the actual setup program itself. So you'll basically be walking through like your, one of your traditional installers on screen. So some of the things there aren't as seamless as the way AppX made them. Is probably the polite way of doing it.
Mark, I'm just going to quickly cut in. Eddie just posted a screenshot of
of all the
premium add-ons that includes endpoint privilege management.
Okay, so privilege, so privilege management is in there. Okay, so the automated app patching then is in premium as well.
It is, yeah, because that's specifically the app packaging stuff. The only thing they really announced with that specifically is that it leverages Microsoft Defender or Windows Defender for endpoint data. It's very much a premium add-on. So everything that we're looking at in this screen is what I've seen as well.
Yep. Okay. And then, so for the cloud, did they talk about the cloud certificate management in any of the sessions?
Not that I saw.
I don't. So the only thing, so I'm curious then, so I'm wondering if the cloud cert management piece, my gut feeling with no evidence is that it's related to the tunnel for mobile app management, because that tunnel for mobile app needs the certificates of the internal servers that you're trying to access.
Yes.
So there could be a relationship.
I have a feeling that it's there to resolve the complexity of deploying, like the trust Kerberos model and the SCEP and the Indes stuff. I think that the hope is that it simplifies that process, although as a premium add-on, I surely hope not. So it might be solving a different thing.
Okay, so that one, so I don't think this, or I don't, like, maybe I sort of glossed over it because I heard certificate management and that part of my brain that doesn't like pain just sort of said, go to sleep.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that wasn't discussed in there. Okay, so at least now I know that I need to move the app patching and version control into the premium section. So that's fine. Okay, so I'm glad we got that result. Now, I guess the other thing then, though, through this is that if we've already got, and let me sort of just pull up Windows Store anyway. I'll just bring this up again. Now that we've got things like VLC, etc., in here that just basically like Win32 apps that get fairly regular updates, then this would be something that you would also think would also, that I guess that would get automatically updated just through the store. But then from the premium option, it's not really it would be not really the app patching. You wouldn't be able to do version control to hold off until you'd actually tested new versions before they rolled out.
Potentially.
But then now, but then you're also starting to go, well, hang on, like what's the app locker overlap, etc. in there as well. I guess we'll sort of have to, we'll deal with that when these things become real.
Let's put a big wait and see what happens sticker over that one.
Yeah, and then with the enhanced phishing protection, so this is where it's really just looking for things like password reuse, etc. Like at the OS level. So it's using good old Smart Screen. So Smart Screen just sort of keeps getting used for more things over time. So basically preventing people from reusing passwords, etc., and not just having it happen at the browser level, but having it happen more at the OS level. So obviously there's still a lot of password reuse out there in production environments. But there are a few other things, and I think there was a blog post, I think, about the enhanced phishing protection. Is there something from a Microsoft.com site?
I mean, you're searching through Bing, so inevitably you'll find the right answer.
Oh, and the thing that I've learned is I can't type in site.docs.microsoft.com anymore.
Interesting.
Or you can, but
it doesn't actually work.
Notice that it will start throwing up. So in this case, it's recommending Thailand or Dutch. So this is for Emil and for Jerome. We could go to the Netherlands site. But if I just go to learn, which is what we're supposed to call it now, it actually works. And yes, I have learned that the hard way by, basically this is like, site docs.microsoft.com is kind of like an auto response to my finger. So I've been constantly going to foreign language versions of Microsoft over the last couple of weeks. No, it doesn't look as if there's any. Oh, here we go. What's new in Windows 11 20? Actually, I don't think. Oh, there we go. Enhanced phishing protection. Just drop that into chat. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there's a couple of additional links in there, so quite a bit more detail. But again, remember this is a Windows 11 feature, not something that I necessarily seen being backported to Windows 10 unless there's a huge customer outrage for it. But otherwise, like I guess in terms of the big announcements, they were probably the main ones that, and probably just the other one was the Linux device management. So kind of not, I don't think that has really been a secret, but now it's official that, and I guess the question that I've got around this as a non-Linux person is Ubuntu that dominant as the desktop OS?
It's huge. So one of the biggest things you need to think about, this is not just from an end user perspective, but the default image for most automation systems, including GitHub Actions and Azure DevOps pipelines, if you are building in a Linux space, which most things are built these days because it's free, it spins up an Ubuntu or an Ubuntu image. So that's probably not the scenario that you'd want to be managing. You wouldn't be managing an ephemeral host. But the idea here is that, that is the most common Linux derivative, probably outside of like Red Hat or Debian, out there at the moment. I know things like Alpine and a whole bunch of other stuff, including whatever the name is for the internal Microsoft variant. But yeah, Ubuntu is huge. So
yeah, because even there with the connected cache preview, yeah, the eFlow deployment they've got, that's Ubuntu as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure if it was just that it was more the one that Microsoft leans heavily on, or if it was just more of a, like in general, Ubuntu is big on the desktop.
It's big on the desktop, but it's more that it sort of powers the back end of a lot of things, because there are variants of Ubuntu that are really, really low weight or lightweight, that are super easy to spin up. So there'll be more stateful instances of Ubuntu in environments than anything else, unless you're specifically building infrastructure that uses like Red Hat or stuff like that.
Okay, and seeing that I've already got this connected cache private preview page up, no, I'm not breaking NDA by bringing this up. All I really can talk about here is if you did want to give it a try, you can go through, and I'm pretty sure you can still go through and apply to get onto the private preview. Yeah, you have to go through, take this survey. So just curious, has anyone else gone through and deployed this yet? So we're not talking about connected cache as part of Config Manager. This is the standalone version that is basically Linux, basically it's running on top of Ubuntu in a Windows Server VM. Alternatively, if you jump down to the MCC for ISP page, this is where you can do it, where they basically give you the instructions to go through and do it without the Windows Server VM and just to do it straight on Linux. And they've got the, if we just sort of go through and take a look. So I was hoping we could do a demo of this month, but it's still private preview. I was expecting this to actually be announced, but if you go through here, basically it will sort of give you, when you go through and get approved, it actually will go through and generate the appropriate scripts, etc., for you, because it needs to do some customization for you. But it's really easy to get it set up. It's connected cache. It does what it's supposed to do. Hopefully soon we can actually show it.
Maybe next month. Maybe.
Maybe in 2023.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I was asked to give
scenarios, Mark. Sorry, I just want to interrupt there. One of the other scenarios for why Ubuntu would be the choice of management platform to or operating system to manage is think of the use case for everyone that's got WSL 2 on their environment. Your laptop. That is a permanently running instance of a virtual machine, essentially running in Ubuntu. I mean, you can pick any flavor of Linux you want, but like the most common is Ubuntu. So think of all of the DevOps or ops or dev people in the company that have WSL running on a device that is currently managed. That instance is not managed. So if we can start managing the WSL instances on machines, then we get even more control and structure around the data security.
So how does that then work with licensing, Quoc?
As far as the counts?
Yeah. Well, I guess for most users, what is it? Is it still 5+5+5 on Intune licensing? I haven't paid attention to that stuff in ages.
Yeah, straight 15. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So in that case, for most people, they'd be well within that 15 anyway, so it shouldn't be an issue. Yeah. But otherwise, they were kind of the big things that, for me, that were sort of the things that stood out. But no doubt, I'm sure some of you have got some other things that you saw, or maybe you've seen a little bit about, but don't know too much about them yet. Or something that you saw that got you really excited. If you want to sort of just jump in and share what you saw that you liked, etc. So multi-tenant NAM. So I didn't see that anywhere, Eddie.
Oh, I don't remember which session I saw it in, but we've had problems with people who are working for 2 or 3 organizations at once, and Microsoft just couldn't accept the fact that a device could be managed by more than one Intune. So now they were saying MAM can support, I don't know whether they're not enrolled, but they basically, you can be a member of more than one organization.
So, and that was something that they actually had with MAM, going back to when MAM was the first Intune component to end up in the Azure portal. You could actually do that with MAM back when it was first introduced. And then that functionality disappeared because I was telling people, because I was using it, and then people going, no, that doesn't exist. And then I went back and you couldn't do it any longer.
I guess one of the questions that you'd have to ask with that sort of scenario is if you have 2 tenants with 2 different policies against a single user or multiple user accounts, which one wins in a device context?
But it would only be, but it's not against the device, it's against the user profile of that application.
Sure, but that would need to be very, very strongly clarified, because if people expect the device to have multiple conflicting policies, then that's not going to work. User script management will definitely.
But the problem, there's a big assumption there that you're using apps that are multi-ID aware.
Yeah.
So once you
I think this would be more around data security in the Office stack.
And that's what MAM really started life as. It was really, what are the list of supported apps? Oh, the Office apps.
Yeah, for sure.
So there, because all of those are multi, or have got the ability to have multiple accounts added, but not the ability to have multiple management of those accounts. Yeah, because multi-tenant MAM for even though those what you would classify as a secondary org, so like a customer org or something like that, even though they'd probably prefer you to be enrolling with their MDM solution, it's like it's either MAM or you issue me with a phone that I'm happy to use, or
for sure, or
I don't take advantage of your services on a device.
Exactly. I would imagine it is a fairly small use case scenario where that is the case. So thankfully, I'm not a consultant anymore, but whenever I'd go out on site and I had to do any work for a number, a decent amount of time, they'd pull out the crusty old laptop, and say sign into this. So I'd be curious to know the real world implications, or how many people are actually doing multi-tenant management, and not just MSPs.
Yeah. Yeah, because even for me, like personally, I'd be pushing back saying, no, I don't really want to add another email account that I need to manage. And it's not the email part that's the issue. It's people sending things to a calendar that I don't pay attention to.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess, it comes down to like app protection policies and all that stuff as well. It's a little much, especially with my aggressive management platform of it doesn't matter what software is on your machine as long as you protect the data.
Yeah. Okay, so sort of.
What does Quark send?
Oh, excellent. So that's the multiple company managed accounts on a single device.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I did see that in a session, but maybe I wasn't paying attention. And I thought, and when they were talking about multiple accounts on a single device, the scenario that I was sort of thinking more of was like more of a frontline worker, like people, different people using the same devices in different shifts or something along those lines. So, okay. But I think though that was maybe that was just part of the frontline worker conversation as well. But now what Quox posted in is, definitely covering, more along the lines of what Eddie was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? I think we've got to see with only two of us running the show tonight, Ben. We're getting through things a lot faster than usual.
We are. We'll have to let Steve know we've figured out a way to optimize the user group.
Not let him
Not let him in the room. Yeah. I don't think he'd complain or argue too much on that.
Okay, well, what we'll do now, I'll just stop the recording in case anyone's got anything they want to raise and not have a permanent record of it tucked away in my OneDrive somewhere. So let me just stop the recording. And for anyone who's watching the recording on YouTube, it's after this stops that all the really interesting conversations happen.
So